Yeah, 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 baby, yeah,
No, Mr. Jameson hasn't returned yet. I'll have him call as soon as he comes in.
My father was born August 1st, 1972, and I was born January 8th, 1992. When he was murdered, I was only 3 years old and he was 23. So when I was younger, I always asked myself, why? Like, why my father? Why when he was young? Why when I was young? But as I grew up, I eventually started to realize that I couldn't keep questioning things that I can't control. And I started to think about the message. And it wasn't until January 20th that I actually started to put pieces to what I call the painful puzzle. And so on January 20th, I went to my grandmother's funeral, and after the repast, the family brought like a bag, and it was a bag of items that belonged to my father. Me and my sister were like rummaging through the bag, and we're looking to see exactly what it is. We found pictures, we found drawings, but the thing that really stuck to me was his certificates. When I was looking at his certificates, I realized like this is the answer to so many of my questions. Like my father, he's just like me. He was involved in so much. He did a lot of community service, and that's when I started to realize, wow, the only word I could think of was legacy. This is his legacy. I am his legacy. People used to always say, you act just like your father, or I would do something, I would get in trouble or make an accomplishment, and they'll say, that's something Brian would do. And I'm actually glad that no one really blatantly said, you are your father's legacy, because I feel like I will be trying to live up to something. Like, my little self would not know what legacy meant, let alone what legacy I was supposed to follow. And I feel like throughout my life, I would have been chasing something. And the way I actually found my father's legacy was organic. And that's what I think makes this story so beautiful. So it was one day in March, I came home, I sat on my floor, and I just leaned back against my bed. This day was just different. I started to think about my future, and somehow my thoughts drifted to my father, and I just started to recite these words. And as I was reciting them, I was like, oh my gosh, these starting to make sense, and they rhyme. And so I started to say them out loud, and I just posted a little snippet to social media, and a lot of my friends responded saying, oh my gosh, I got tears in my eyes, and that's a beautiful tribute to your father. And then I started to write it down on a piece of paper, and then from there, the ball just started to roll, and I started to think about this whole thing, I am a living legacy. So like many pieces of art, I believe that people will always find the message in the art that speaks to them the most. But there is one message that I want to be able to share, and that is, in order to feel joy, you also have to feel pain. I was reading a book by Mark Nepo, and he basically said joy and pain takes the same amount of effort to achieve the same amount of emotion. Although one feels good and one feels bad, they take the same amount of effort. And so I want to share with people that when I was younger, growing up and realizing that my father, my biological father, was murdered, that was painful. But when I started to think about his legacy, and as I got older and I started to think about, some of the things that I do remember from my father, that's how I found joy. And so although it can be painful thinking about losing a loved one or actually never getting a chance to really know a loved one, you can find joy in thinking about what they stood for, and then try to align your life with some of the things that they have done in order to stay connected. So my father was a math whiz. At least that's what a lot of people used to always tell me. And I have a vivid memory of me just sitting on the bed as a little girl and him teaching me my ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And I just remember that I would keep that vivid memory all throughout my life, and I actually started to get engaged and more encouraged to want to study numbers, because that's the only memory I had of my father. And so I started to take a lot of accounting classes when I was in high school, and then in college I decided to have an accounting major. After college I got my certified public accounting license, and then from there I started to realize that I really want to use my love for numbers to teach my community about financial literacy. And so one of my grand dreams is to be able to teach people how to budget their finances, invest their finances, and then just join hands with other people and help them stop living paycheck to paycheck and build generational wealth, and just create a community that is more financially literate all around.
Don't forget about me, love, about me.